They were old. They were so old that they had watched the first stars of the galaxy come to life. They had seen galaxies crash into each other and form new shapes. They had existed for 11 billion years, and in all that time, they had never found anything in the universe that could challenge them. Their bodies were not made of flesh and bone like simple creatures. They existed as pure thought and energy, spread across the dark spaces between stars. Their technology was so advanced that other species could not tell the difference between machines and the natural laws of the universe. When they wanted a star to die, it died. When they wanted a planet to form, it formed. They were, in every way that mattered, the gods of the cosmos. For billions of years, they had watched over the universe like gardeners tending a vast garden. They found young species on distant worlds and studied them. Some species showed promise, and they helped them grow. They gave these species knowledge and technology. They guided them toward peace and wisdom. Other species showed only violence and greed. These species they destroyed before they could spread their darkness to the stars. They had never failed. They had never met a species they could not control. They had never faced a problem they could not solve. This made them proud, perhaps too proud. It was an ordinary day in the great halls of the Concordance when the sensors detected something unusual. A small blue planet orbited a yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The planet was covered in water and green growing things, and on this planet, creatures made of carbon and water had begun to walk upright and use simple tools. The observer assigned to this sector sent a routine report. New intelligent species detected. Planet designation, Earth. Species designation, human. Current development level, primitive. They have learned to make fire and shape stone into weapons. Standard observation protocols initiated. The Concordance barely noticed the report. Thousands of species reached this level of development every million years. Most of them destroyed themselves before they ever reached the stars. The humans would likely do the same. There was nothing special about them. But then something happened that had not happened in 3 billion years. The resonance spoke. The resonance was not any kind of creature at all. It was something far older and stranger. It was the echo of the universe's first moment, the voice of creation itself woven into the fabric of space and time. It had existed before the first atom formed, and it would exist after the last star died. The resonance had spoken to the only twice in all their long history. The first time, it warned them of a great disaster that would have destroyed half the universe. The second time, it showed them how to survive a trap that killed most intelligent species. Both times, its words had saved them from extinction. Now it spoke a third time. The voice came not through sound or light, but through something deeper. Every in the universe heard it at the same moment, felt it in the core of their being. Do not touch the humans, the resonance said. Do not test them. Do not challenge them. Turn your eyes away from that small blue world and forget it exists. This is my warning to you. This is my gift to you. Do not waste it. The words faded, leaving only silence and confusion. The High Concordance gathered for the first time in 3 billion years. 1,000 of the oldest, and came together in a space between dimensions to discuss what they had heard. Their thoughts merged and separated, argued and agreed, as they tried to understand. The resonance has never been wrong, said one of the elders. We should obey. But why? Asked another. We scanned that planet. We analyzed those creatures. They are nothing. They are animals playing with rocks. How could they possibly threaten us? Perhaps the resonance has finally broken down, suggested a third. It is very old. Even the voice of creation must fade eventually. The debate continued for what humans would call a century. They scanned Earth again and again, using every tool they had developed over 11 billion years. They looked at humanity across every spectrum of light and energy. They examined humans through dimensions that had no names. They searched for anything that might explain the resonance's warning. They found nothing. The humans were exactly what they appeared to be. They were fragile creatures of meat and bone, living short lives on a small planet. They fought each other over food and territory. They died from diseases and injuries that any advanced species would consider trivial. They were, by every measure they used, completely ordinary. The resonance must be mistaken, the concordance finally decided. There is nothing special about these humans, but we will be careful. We will watch them closely. We will not interfere until we understand why the resonance spoke. And so the watching began. The placed observers around Earth, hidden in folds of space that humans would never detect. They recorded everything. They watched humans hunt and gather, fight and make peace, live and die. They watched generations pass, each one slightly different from the last. At first, the observers were bored. Humans did exactly what every primitive species did. They formed tribes. They developed language. They created simple religions to explain the things they did not understand. All of this was normal. All of this was expected. But slowly, so slowly that even the patient almost missed it, something strange began to happen. Humans started doing things that made no sense. They began to tell stories. Not just simple tales about hunting or danger, but complex stories about things that did not exist. They spoke of gods they had never seen, of heroes who could not possibly be real, of worlds beyond their own that they had no evidence for. Other species developed stories too, but human stories were different. Humans believed their stories. They built their entire lives around fictions. They died for ideas that existed only in their minds. The first observer to notice this filed a report that would later be seen as prophetic. These creatures do not simply react to the world around them, the observer wrote. They imagine worlds that do not exist, and then they try to make those worlds real. I do not know what this means, but I feel, for the first time in my existence, something I cannot name. I think the ancient humans would have called it unease. The concordance received the report and filed it away. The observer was probably just tired from the long assignment. There was nothing to worry about. There was nothing special about humans. This was what they told themselves. This was what they believed. They were wrong. 300,000 years passed. For this was like a single long afternoon. For humanity, it was an eternity of struggle and change. The observer assigned to Earth was named. He had watched over thousands of species during his long existence, and he approached this assignment with calm professionalism. Humans were primitive creatures on a small world. There was nothing to worry about. At first, everything went as expected. Humans spread out from their original home in Africa. They learned to survive in deserts and forests, in mountains and frozen plains. They developed better tools. They tamed fire and used it to cook their food and warm their caves. All of this was normal. Then the ice came. A great cold spread across Earth, covering huge portions of the planet in sheets of ice. Many species died. They had seen this happen on countless worlds. Usually, the intelligent species either died out or retreated to small pockets of warm land and waited for the cold to pass. Humans did something different. They looked at the ice and the cold, at the death all around them, and they refused to accept it. They could not fight the ice. They could not make it go away, but they could survive it. They wrapped themselves in the skins of animals. They built shelters from bones and hides. They walked across frozen lands that should have killed them, and they lived. Made a note in his report. Species shows unusual determination. Where other creatures accept the limits of their environment, humans refuse to acknowledge those limits exist. The ice eventually retreated. Humans came out of their caves and spread across the world faster than any species had ever observed. They crossed oceans on boats made of logs. They climbed the highest mountains. They walked into the hottest deserts. Wherever they went, they survived. And then they did something truly strange. They began to farm. Other species had developed farming before. It was a normal step in evolution. But other species developed farming because they needed more food. Humans developed farming because they imagined a future where they would need more food. They planted seeds not because they were hungry today, but because they believed they might be hungry next year. They were planning for a future that did not exist yet. They were making decisions based on worlds they had created only in their minds. Felt that strange sensation again, the one he could not name. He increased his observation efforts. Centuries passed. Humans built cities. They created writing to record their thoughts. They developed mathematics, not because they needed it for survival, but simply because they wanted to understand how numbers worked. They looked up at the stars and asked questions about what they were made of and how far away they were. They are curious, reported. Not curious in the way that animals are curious about food or danger. They are curious about everything. They want to know things that have no practical value. They study the stars even though they cannot reach them. They theorize about tiny particles they cannot see. They argue about philosophy while they still burn wood for heat. The concordance read the reports and dismissed them. Curiosity was not dangerous. Curiosity was actually a sign of a healthy developing species, but was beginning to have doubts. He watched humans create art that made no sense. They painted pictures of things that did not exist. They wrote songs about emotions. They danced in patterns that served no purpose except to bring joy. Other species created art too, but human art was different. Human art was not just decoration. It was communication. It was a way of sharing ideas and feelings across time and space. A human could look at a painting made 1,000 years ago and understand exactly what the painter felt. A human could read words written by someone long dead and feel as if that person was speaking directly to them. Humans had found a way to make their thoughts immortal. Had never seen anything like it. Then came the day that changed everything. It was the year 1945 by human counting. Was monitoring human communications when he detected a flash of energy unlike anything humans had produced before. For a moment, he thought his instruments were broken. Then he realized what had happened. Humans had split the atom. They had unlocked the fundamental forces that held matter together. They had found a way to release the energy that powered stars, and they had done it while they were in the middle of the largest war in their history. They were fighting and killing each other by the millions, and at the same time, they were making discoveries that should have taken them another 800 years. Sent an urgent message to the concordance. Species has achieved nuclear fission. Estimated development timeline, 847 years ahead of projections. They accomplished this while simultaneously waging global war against their own kind. I recommend immediate reassessment of species threat level. I recommend we consider the resonance's warning. I recommend. He stopped. He did not know what to recommend. For the first time in his long existence, was afraid. He continued watching. He watched humans build nuclear weapons and point them at each other. He watched them come within minutes of destroying their entire civilization, then step back from the edge at the last moment. He watched them take the same technology that could end all life on Earth and use it to power their cities and heal their sick. They were insane. They were brilliant. They were everything at once. And then made a mistake. He looked too deeply. He used forbidden techniques to see not just what humans were, but what they would become. He looked into the streams of probability and possibility that flowed from this small blue world. What he saw broke something inside him. The concordance found his observation post empty 3 days later. His instruments were still running, his records still intact, but was gone. He had left only one message, carved into the fabric of space itself where it could never be erased. The resonance was right. I looked too long, I saw what they become. I am leaving this galaxy forever. Do not follow me. Do not contact me. Forget I existed. And please, for the sake of everything that ever was or ever will be, do not challenge them. Do not test them. Do not make them show you what they can do. Just leave them alone and pray they leave you alone. The concordance read the message and debated its meaning. Some argued that it had simply gone mad from the long assignment. It happened sometimes. Watching primitive species for too long could damage even a mind. Others were not so sure. Perhaps we should listen, said one elder. Perhaps the resonance and both saw something we cannot see. Impossible, said the leader of the concordance. We are 11 billion years old. We have mastered every force in the universe. What could a species of hairless apes possibly do that would frighten us? No one had an answer. They sent a new observer to Earth and continued watching. They told themselves that everything was under control. They told themselves that humans were just another species following a predictable path. They were still telling themselves this when human ships began appearing in their space 200 years later. And by then, it was far too late to listen to the warning. The year was 2157 by human counting. 200 years had passed since humans first split the atom, and in that short time, they had spread across the stars like fire across dry grass. They had watched it all with growing disbelief. Humans had built their first starship in 2089. It was a clumsy thing, slow and inefficient. They calculated that it would take humans at least 500 years to develop faster-than-light travel. Humans did it in 40 years. Their ships used principles that they did not fully understand. They bent space in ways that should have been impossible. They traveled between stars in days instead of centuries. And they did all of this while still fighting among themselves, still dying of diseases, still wasting their time on art and music and love. By 2157, humans had colonized 17 worlds. They had not unified under a single government. They had not achieved any of the benchmarks that they used to measure species maturity. They were messy and chaotic and completely unpredictable. And they were spreading faster than any species in recorded history. The concordance decided it was time for contact, not to guide or control as they had done with so many species before. They had a feeling that guidance would not work with humans. Instead, they wanted to assess. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know if humanity would be a partner, a servant, or a threat. They created an emissary. It was a being of pure thought wrapped in a shell of crystallized gravity, beautiful and terrifying to behold. It could speak any language, survive any environment, and communicate the full power and majesty of The emissary appeared before the United Human Congress on the colony world of New Geneva. It materialized in the center of the Great Hall, where representatives from all 17 human worlds had gathered to discuss trade routes and mining rights. The humans did not panic. They did not run or scream or fall to their knees in worship. They simply stopped talking and turned to look at the strange being that had appeared among them. "We are the emissary announced. Its voice filled the hall, speaking in perfect English. "We have watched your kind since you first looked up at the stars with wonder instead of fear. We have seen you grow from frightened animals to a species that walks between worlds. We have come to offer you a place among the elder races of this universe." Silence filled the hall. The emissary waited for the expected response. Gratitude, perhaps, or fear, or desperate questions about the nature of the universe. Instead, a small woman stood up from the human delegation. She was old, her face lined with years, her body kept alive by machines that hummed quietly beneath her skin. Her name was, and she had been a diplomat for over 60 years. She looked at the emissary without fear, without awe, with something that might have been amusement. "We know you have been watching," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "We have known for about 200 years. We found your observation posts. We studied your scanning technology. We listened to your communications." The emissary froze. This was not possible. Technology was 11 billion years advanced. No primitive species could detect it, let alone understand it. "You are lying," the emissary said. "Our technology is beyond your comprehension. smiled. It was not a warm smile. Your observation post in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, your scanner hidden in the magnetic field of our sun, your communication relay in the dark matter halo around our galaxy. Shall I continue? The emissary said nothing. It was transmitting everything back to the concordance, and it could feel their shock and confusion echoing through the connection. We have a question, continued, and we would like an honest answer. The resonance, the thing that warned you about us, what is it, and why is it afraid? Now the emissary felt something it had never felt before, something that might have been fear. How do you know about the resonance? It demanded. That knowledge is beyond any species but our own. We found it, said simply. Or rather, it found us. About 100 years ago, we developed technology that could detect patterns in the cosmic background radiation. We found a message hidden there, woven into the fabric of space itself. A warning about us, from something very old, something that sounded almost scared. She stepped closer to the emissary. Despite her small size and fragile body, she seemed to fill the room. The resonance told you to leave us alone. You did not listen. We know this because we intercepted your debate. We know that your concordance decided we were nothing special. We know that you have been trying to find our weaknesses for 2 centuries. The emissary tried to speak, but continued. We are not angry. We understand. You are very old and very powerful, and you have never met anything you could not control. It must be confusing to find a species that does not fit your categories. She paused and looked around the room. Every human representative was watching in silence. They all knew what was happening. They had all known this moment would come. We are going to give you a choice, said. You can accept us as equals. You can share the universe with us peacefully. You can learn from us as we learn from you. Or what? The emissary asked. Smile faded. Her eyes grew hard. Or you can find out why the resonance is afraid. You can challenge us and see what happens. But I should warn you of something first. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. We know about the other species you have destroyed. The ones that did not meet your standards. The ones you burned out of existence before they could threaten your control. We found the records. We found the graves. And we made a promise to ourselves a long time ago. What promise? The emissary asked. That no one would ever do that to us. That we would never allow any power, no matter how old or how strong, to decide whether humanity lives or dies. We do not want war. We do not seek conflict. But we will not submit. We will not kneel. We will not beg for the right to exist. She stepped back and spread her arms wide. So choose, ancient ones. Choose carefully. Because whatever happens next will be your decision, not ours. The emissary transmitted everything back to the concordance. The response came quickly. They are bluffing. They are trying to frighten us with words. Send a fleet. Show them what true power looks like. Teach them their place. The emissary delivered the message. The concordance does not accept your terms. We have decided to demonstrate the consequences of defiance. A fleet is coming. You will submit or be destroyed. Nodded slowly. She did not look surprised. She did not look afraid. Then you have made your choice, she said, and now you will see ours. She turned and walked out of the hall. Behind her, the other human representatives followed. Not one of them looked back. The emissary stood alone in the empty hall, and for the first time in its long existence, it wondered if the concordance had made a terrible mistake. 3 days later, the fleet arrived. 3 days after that, the fleet was gone. And they finally understood why the resonance had warned them. The war fleet appeared in the skies above New Geneva like a storm made of light and shadow. 12,000 vessels, each one larger than a city, each one carrying weapons that could turn planets into dust and stars into bombs. It was the greatest display of military power the galaxy had ever seen. The fleet had never been deployed in full. The mere threat of its existence had ended 100 wars before they began. Species saw it coming and surrendered immediately. There was no point in fighting. There was no hope of winning. The fleet was death itself, and everything that saw it knew this truth. The humans of New Geneva looked up at the sky filled with alien ships. They saw the weapons powering up, felt the scanners probing their cities, heard the demands for surrender broadcast on every frequency. They did not surrender. Instead, they sent a single message. We gave you a choice. You chose poorly. The commander, an ancient being named, ordered the attack. He expected the battle to last minutes. He expected human cities to burn and human ships to scatter. He expected to teach these arrogant creatures the price of defiance. The battle lasted 72 hours, and at the end of it, Or's entire fleet existed only as expanding clouds of debris. On the first day, human forces engaged the ships with weapons that should not have existed. The shields were perfect. They had been refined over billions of years. Nothing could pass through them. Human weapons did not try to pass through them. They simply ignored them. Projectiles made of matter that existed in dimensions that could not access phase through shields as if they were not there. Human fighters, piloted by minds uploaded into quantum crystals, moved faster than any physical creature could react. They dodged attacks before the attacks were even fired, reading the enemy's intentions through probability calculations that bordered on prophecy. Or lost 3,000 ships in the first 6 hours. He had never lost a single ship in any previous battle. How is this possible? He demanded. Our technology is 11 billion years advanced. Theirs is barely 200. His advisors had no answer. They were too busy dying. On the second day, Or decided to end the battle with a single decisive strike. He ordered his remaining ships to target New Geneva's sun. It was a standard tactic, one that had used many times before. Kill the star and everything in the system dies. Clean, efficient, final. The fleet moved into position, weapons charged, or prepared to give the order. The sun fired back. Beams of pure stellar energy lanced out from the star's surface, each one guided with impossible precision. Ships that had existed for millions of years vanished in seconds. They scattered in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. They modified their star, one of Or's advisors reported, his voice shaking with something that might have been terror. They turned it into a weapon. They turned their own sun into a fortress. How did they do this? When did they do this? Or did not answer. He was watching his fleet die and trying to calculate how many ships he needed to retreat. On the third day, a single human vessel approached the command ship. It was tiny, barely larger than an escape pod. It carried no visible weapons. Its shields were laughable. A single shot from any weapon would destroy it instantly. Or ordered his ships to hold fire. Something about that tiny vessel bothered him. Something about its confidence as it flew through the wreckage of his fleet. The vessel docked with his command ship. The airlock opened, and a single human stepped aboard. She was old. Her skin was wrinkled, her hair was white, and machines hummed beneath her flesh, keeping her alive. But she walked with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Her name was Admiral Wei, and she had commanded human forces since before most of Or's current officers were born. She walked onto the command deck without escort, without weapons, without fear. She looked at Or and his officers, studied the screens showing the scattered remnants of his fleet, and smiled. "You have two choices," she said. Her voice was calm and quiet, but it filled the room. "You can leave human space forever and accept that we will never submit to your authority, or we can show you what we have been building in the dark matter halos between galaxies for the last 50 years. Or stared at her. This tiny creature, this fragile being of meat and bone, standing on his ship and giving him orders. "You have won a battle," he said. "You have not won a war. The Concordance has resources beyond your imagination. We can build a new fleet. We can build 100 new fleets. You cannot defeat us forever." Shook her head slowly. "You still do not understand. This was not us trying to win. This was us being polite. This was us giving you a chance to walk away with your pride intact." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. It fit in the palm of her hand. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the air between them. Or looked at the hologram. He looked at it for a long time, and then, for the first time in his existence, he felt true fear. The hologram showed a structure. It was vast beyond comprehension, hidden in the space between galaxies where no natural light ever reached. It pulsed with energies that they had never seen before, and it was pointed at the heart of space. "We call it the Answer," said. "We started building it 50 years ago, right after we decoded your communications and learned what you did to the other species that challenged you. We built it because we promised ourselves that no one would ever decide our fate for us." She looked at her with eyes that held no mercy. "You are 11 billion years old. We have been spacefaring for about 2 centuries, and in those 2 centuries, we have built something that terrifies the resonance itself. Do you really want to see what it does? Do you really want to push a species that learned to split atoms while we were trying to exterminate ourselves?" Or said nothing. He was calculating, he was analyzing, and every calculation, every analysis led to the same conclusion. The humans were not bluffing. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I told you, leave our space. Leave us alone. Accept that humanity will never bow to anyone. Do this and we will live in peace. Refuse and—" she gestured at the hologram. "We would rather not use it, truly. We did not build it because we wanted to destroy you. We built it because we wanted to make sure you would never destroy us." The command deck was silent. Every officer waited for Orr's decision. Finally, he spoke. "We will retreat. We will report to the Concordance. They will decide what happens next." Nodded. "Fair enough. But tell them this. Tell them we know about the resonance. Tell them we know why it warned them. And tell them that if they come back, if they challenge us again, we will not be polite next time." She turned and walked back toward her ship. At the airlock, she paused and looked back. "One more thing. We are not your enemies. We do not want to destroy you. We want to live in a universe where all species can exist freely. If your Concordance ever decides they want peace instead of dominance, we will be here. The door is always open." She stepped through the airlock, and her tiny ship flew away through the debris of the shattered fleet. Or watched her go. He thought about her words. He thought about the answer, pulsing in the darkness between galaxies. He thought about everything he believed about the universe and humanity's place in it. And he began to wonder if everything he believed was wrong. The fleet retreated. The Concordance received the report, and for the next several centuries, no vessel entered human space. But they did not forget, and slowly, very slowly, they began to change. The year was 3000 by human counting. They had not returned to human space in over 800 years. In that time, humanity had spread across the galaxy. They had colonized thousands of worlds. They had built wonders that even the ancient could not explain. They had done all of this while remaining exactly as chaotic, divided, and unpredictable as they had always been. The Concordance watched from a distance. They had retreated to a single galaxy on the far side of the observable universe, as far from humanity as they could get. They told themselves they were simply waiting for the right moment to return. They told themselves that humanity would eventually weaken, eventually decline, eventually fall like every other species in history. They were still telling themselves this when the resonance spoke for the last time. The voice came without warning, filling every mind across the entire universe. It was weaker than before, tired somehow, but the words were clear. "I warned you. I am not a prophet. I am not a god. I am the echo of what will be, reflected back through time. I knew what humanity would become because I have seen the end of this universe. And at the end, in the final moment before entropy claims everything that ever was, only humans remain. The concordance demanded explanation. They demanded to understand how this could be possible. How could any species, no matter how stubborn, survive the death of all things? The resonance was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried something new, something that sounded almost like awe. You see time as a river. It flows in one direction. What is past is past. What is future is fixed. You accept this because you have never imagined it could be different. Humans do not see time this way. Humans see time as clay, something to be shaped, something to be molded, something that bends to their will if they push hard enough. The concordance struggled to understand. That is impossible. Time is fundamental. It cannot be changed. Everything is impossible until someone does it. Humans have built gods out of mathematics and dreams. They have waged war against entropy itself, and they won. In 10 billion years, when the last stars die, humanity will reignite them. In 100 billion years, when atoms themselves begin to decay, humanity will rewrite the laws of physics. In 1 trillion years, when the universe itself begins to fade, humanity will simply refuse to let it end. What are they? The concordance asked. How can any species do this? I do not know. I have seen every species that has ever existed or ever will exist. The entropy lords, the architects of the first light, all of them fade, all of them end. Humanity does not end. Humanity does not fade. They simply continue, forever. They are the species that refuses to accept that endings are real. And because they refuse, because enough of them believe strongly enough, endings become optional for them. They are the last. They are the first. They are the universe's final answer to the question of whether consciousness can outlast reality itself. The concordance sat with this knowledge for a century. They debated. They analyzed. They tried to find a way to reject what they had been told. But the resonance had never been wrong, and deep down they had seen hints of this truth themselves. Finally, one of them spoke. It was the youngest among them, barely 4 billion years old. Should we be afraid? It asked. The resonance laughed. It was a strange sound, coming from the voice of creation itself. The first time in 13 billion years that anyone had heard the resonance laugh. Afraid? The humans have already begun uplifting other species, teaching them their trick, spreading their gift. In 1 million years, they will have a choice. Join them or be left behind in a universe that no longer has room for extinction. I told you not to challenge them, not because they would destroy you, but because they would save you. And salvation, for a species that has spent 11 billion years believing it was already perfect, that is far more terrifying than death. The transmission ended. The resonance fell silent. It would never speak again. The concordance debated for another century. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to hide. Some wanted to pretend they had not heard what they heard. In the end, they chose none of these things. They chose to chain. It was the hardest thing they had ever done. For 11 billion years, they had been the masters of the universe. They had decided which species lived and which species died. They had never doubted themselves, never questioned their right to rule. Now they had to learn a new way. They had to become students instead of teachers. They had to accept that a species of hairless apes from a small blue planet had somehow surpassed them in ways they could barely understand. It took them a long time, millions of years, but slowly, painfully, they began to change. The year was 1 trillion by human counting. The last natural star in the universe had burned out 1 million years ago. The cosmos was dark and cold, drifting toward the final silence that physics said was inevitable. But the cosmos was not silent, and it was not dark. On a platform made of woven light, in a space where no natural laws applied anymore, an elder stood beside a human child. The elder was one of the first, a being that had existed since the beginning of time. The child was young, barely a century old, still learning the basics of reality manipulation. The child looked out at the darkness. "Tell me the story again," she said, "the one about the warning." The elder smiled. It had taken millions of years to learn how to smile, but now it came naturally. "Once, long ago, the universe itself told us to leave your people alone. It warned us that challenging humanity would be the greatest mistake we ever made." "Did you listen?" the child asked. "No, we did not. We were proud and foolish. We thought we knew everything. We thought nothing could surprise us." "What happened?" The elder looked out at the darkness. "Your ancestors surprised us. They showed us that everything we believed was wrong. They showed us that the universe was bigger and stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined." "Are you sad?" the child asked, "that we were better than you?" The elder laughed. It was a warm sound filled with genuine joy. "No, I am grateful. Before humanity, we were powerful, but we were alone. We had no peers, no equals, no one who could challenge us to grow. We thought this made us strong. We did not realize it made us stagnant." The elder knelt down to look the child in the eyes. "Your species taught us the most important lesson in the universe. Endings are not real unless you accept them. Limits are not real unless you believe in them. And any species, no matter how young or small, can reshape reality itself if they refuse to stop trying." The child smiled. "That is a good lesson." "It is. And now, thanks to your people, we will never forget it. We will live forever, alongside humanity, and we will spend eternity learning new things and growing in new ways." The child looked out at the dead universe around them. "But there are no more stars. Everything is dark. Is this not sad?" The elder shook its head. "Watch." The child stretched out her hand. Light gathered in her palm. She concentrated, feeling the equations that described reality, finding the places where they could be bent without breaking. She threw the light into the darkness. A new star ignited, then another, then 1,000, then 1,000,000. The child laughed with delight. She was creating galaxies, just for fun, because she could, because she refused to accept that the universe had to stay dark. The elder watched her with pride. Somewhere out there in the light of the new stars, the resonance watched too. And for the first time since the universe began, it was not afraid of the ending. Because now there would never be one. Humanity had seen the death of all things written in the laws of physics. They had read the equations that described the final darkness, and they had looked at those equations and said a simple word: no. That was the secret. That was the gift. That was what made humanity different from every other species in the history of everything. Other species accepted what they were told. Humans did not. Other species believed in limits. Humans did not. Other species saw the end coming and prepared to die gracefully. Humans saw the end coming and got angry. They refused. They fought. They raged against the dying of the light. And in the end, the light did not die. The universe continued. The stars burned. Life flourished. And humanity, the young species from the small blue world, the creatures that ancient gods had dismissed as nothing special, stood at the center of it all. They had been warned about. They had been feared. They had been underestimated. And now they were eternal. This was what the resonance had seen. This was what the observer had glimpsed before he fled in terror. This was what they had refused to believe until humanity proved it beyond all doubt. Some species are born to accept the universe as it is. Humans are born to make the universe what they want it to be. And that, in the end, made all the difference.